I'll talk about something much narrower, limited to a little bit of area that I'm a little bit familiar with. I have my colleagues and friends here. Pleased to meet you all again. Let me use this as a basis to start the discussion. When me and Kamal were putting this together, he suggested, you know what, you should come from both ends. And there is this old joke where these two people dig tunnel from two different points. They say, we charge you one amount for this tunnel. And the guy asks, what if you guys don't meet? They say, for the same price, you get two tunnels. So something like that. We try to say, okay, we start on innovation on one side, and we have technology on the other side. Let's see how we meet. I attempted that. Let's see how we go about it. We're looking at a technology mapping. If you see from a continuum, we clearly at Volvo bet on all three technologies. So we shout out loud wherever we need to that ICE is not dead. Okay. So ICE is still alive, and it's going to be alive for some time. It has its own sweet spot. Maybe we still clearly do not know exactly where and how much and what is the mix, but we clearly know that it will coexist for sure. Of course, battery electric vehicle, we all are aware of this. All of us are very familiar, and like Kamal said, we are pretty much aware of what is going on. Fuel cell, of course, is the other story that we are. How do we look at this in a classical sense is the other view of what Kamal showed. It's a very detailed view of how Volvo looks at this. And if you see it carefully, you can see that the combustion engine will run its life with the biofuels, of course, battery electric, and then fuel cell electric as well. We are heavily investing in all these areas, of course, as a technology. We have productions of serial production of electric vehicles, not only in trucks, but also in construction equipment, right? So if you look at it from the continuum perspective, you can see it broadly as the first mile. For example, where you go from the port to a logistics center, a warehouse or something similar. Then you have the middle mile, where actually the transportation happens from A to B. Then of course the last mile, which we are all familiar with. So I was just looking up the other day, there's last mile, there is a lot of debate. Is it speed or is it convenience? So I just read that there was a survey done that people were asked, do you want the e-commerce delivery to be very quick, or you want it to be at a convenient slot? Apparently 60 or 70% said it should be convenient slot. So I think somewhere time starts to cease to be a variable as such. But from a technology perspective, from a transportation, moving things and moving people are quite different. When you look at moving things, maybe a car has 1 or 4 people, especially when it comes to electric vehicle. And you look at range as such, the sensitivity to load is not as much as in a truck. A truck can go anywhere between 0 to 30, 40 tons and so on. So the sensitivity to slopes, to where you drive, the whole range of these dynamics makes it very different where electric cars versus electric trucks can be compatible or not. So that means the same rule not necessarily maps to both of them. So when you look at distance as an axis, first and last mile, of course, obviously are the smaller range, going to the last mile, picking from the store back and so forth. But the middle mile is an interesting piece where the trucking industry is looking at, where there can be still a medium range, which is like intercity, so to say, 200, 300 kind of a range, and then there's a long range. So if you look at this, if you keep this in mind, it already gives you a hint that perhaps one solution does not fit them all. And it is necessary to understand this, because we try to, and you can also understand that as companies, we cannot invest so much on every technology, right? You need to somehow pick the battle and then move on with that. If you just flip it around, you can say a short range, perhaps BEV is the current scenario where it looks very, very, let's say, a sweet spot for BEV. And of course, it also depends on, I'm only talking about the trucking industry here. But when you look at medium, long range, the line itself is a little bit blurred, so to say, okay? But when it is between them, of course, again, BEV can come into picture. But of course, ICE can continue to. Now I'm talking about ICE with biofuels, not the traditional ones. But then, of course, the fuel cell. They all have their own challenges. ICE is perhaps a little bit more ready than BEV, and BEV is perhaps more ready than FCV. But we need all three of them. That's what we try to say. And this does not come only at the cost of technology, right? So if you look at the mix, we believe it can be modulated by several different things. The top 3 could be energy prices. So what is the cost of green electricity? What is the cost of green hydrogen? What is the cost of green biofuel? We don't know how it will evolve. And that will also sort of decide and dictate Who will choose what over the other technology? Regulation, of course, will play a role. What is the regulation that is imposed on us to make this business work? Infrastructure is a very interesting piece. If you look at how, I was just chatting up with Prashant also, when you look at electric vehicle and the charger infrastructure, we all are very familiar with this chicken and egg story. Oh, we need charger, or need we need more vehicles, right? So when you look at Volvo, how do we deal with this? We said, you know what, across Europe, we'll install 1600 odd chargers, high-speed chargers across Europe to get the whole journey kick-started. So we don't wait for things to happen, we make things happen. That's why I feel very proud to be part of this journey, because we're actually walking the talk when it comes to electrification. We're putting the trucks on the road, we're putting the chargers on the street, we make sure people are inspired by this to work. Same with fuel cell. Kamal talked about cell-centric, but you also look at how competitors are partners in this journey, right? So when you look at the charging infrastructure talked about, Volvo, Traton, that's a Volkswagen group, and Daimler together put this charger. So that means there is a kind of a different level of collaboration to make the infrastructure work. We cannot just wait for somebody to do certain things. We need to do it ourselves as well. When you look at from an autonomous, which is the other technology piece, so we looked at the propulsion technology, now we look at autonomous, we see it in three areas. Confined areas. Again, I also was getting this feedback from Prashant that mining areas are very confined areas. You can practically dictate what is the condition in a mine, what kind of traffic and what kind of vehicle you can allow. You can decide your traffic rules, so to say. That's where our first step of autonomous will be as a technology. The second piece is the first mile. Now this is a big step, because though the distance is not necessarily huge, the second step is a public environment. And our CTO very nicely puts it, saying, when it is public, it means anything can happen. Anybody can come from anywhere, anytime. And that's what public actually means. So you can encounter anything, and that means our systems should be very, very ready. So that means our second step is going to be a major step when you go autonomous as such. The third one, of course, is the middle mile. The long haul on the highway, whether it's an e-highway or not, where there is a driver backup for certain parts, but majority of it can be autonomous. And the underlying factor is our conviction that autonomous has a better business case in trucking than in passenger cars today. That's the belief around which we have built this model, that we'll go step 1, confined, step 2, public but short range, 3 is the actual business where we are on the highway. Now, turning the discussion to the other side is coming from the innovation perspective. What customers are actually looking at are not products and solutions, but experiences. You and me are looking at experiences. This is a nice slide by Deloitte which completely says, okay, you have a truck, fine, but I might not want to know what you use to transport 2 diamonds compared to 100 kgs of coal. So experience is something else, and a solution and a product is something else. So where does that come from? That comes from innovation. And we talked about innovation as such. So when Chris was asking the question yesterday evening on the stage for the prize giveaway, what is innovation? I was tempted to use this, but I'll see if Chris still is impressed by this or not. So developing innovation is of course something new, but that's the easy part, but something that is of use is not so easy. And that's where I think the differentiation comes in. A lot of us can come up with, I think I also heard a lot of people, and we have seen a lot of studies saying why so many startups, 80-90% of the startups fail, is not that the people are not smart, they're extremely smart people. Perhaps they're building things nobody wants is the number one reason. So the utility part is the game changer as we go on. And you will hear more about collaboration and partnership, but when you look at innovation in these 3 technologies plus the autonomous technology, I think there is too much for one company to do. We can't handle it, any single company. It is a moment for, like Kamal put it, for the industry to change as such. And it can come from any function. And I am in a room of technologists, being one myself, I want to submit that it need not come from only development of technology. It can come from function. It can come from business model. How do we make payments? Just, how do we use FASTag as a replacement, or a replacement to FASTag, how we make payments? And it could come from anything. How do we deal with people? We have forgotten one important piece when we talk with people, is that we assume that they will also evolve into something that we want as the industry changes. That's not so automatic. That's very hard, much harder than before lunch we heard as well. So the idea is innovation can come from any of these as such. The key point is, I always love this, it's not that we cannot find the solution. We have very fantastic smart people across the globe in all the companies that we are part of. It is that we cannot see the actual problem. And I think this is where the catch is. This catch is what is going to differentiate whether we get success or not when the whole industry is changing. And the key point there, I would like to say is, if you look at time, Kamal drew this line on this time axis, right? If I look at it, the present and the future as two domains, the present problems are quite okay, reasonably manageable to grasp and understand. Okay, so we have 1,45,000, 1,50,000 deaths on Indian roads. Okay, pretty much you have the data point. You can slice and dice, and you get somewhere and you find the problem and then try to fix it. But as you look into the future, with all those technology changes that I talked about, it is not that simple because you have to watch trends. And trends are not guaranteed data points. Their trends are indicators. That means they may or may not end up as a potential valuable opportunity. It can be, but it need not be. So what is the game changer is, if you can intercept the future with the problems, again, I go back to Prashant's discussion that we were just catching up on how a semiconductor company is looking at it. They're saying, if I can find a problem that can come in 10 years and find a solution for that now, and I think I'm in the game much ahead of others. But that's much harder. So in a way, the risk reward is very different. On the left side, the risk reward is more lower and medium. On the right side, it is much higher. It's harder to predict, but if you get it right, you have a winner, right? So in that context is very critical. Why is that so critical? If you look at the World Economic Forum skill set, critical thinking, creativity, and complex problem solving are listed as the top 3. And if you combine them, that's where you get innovation. But when you get this point, everybody interprets a same situation in different ways. And that's what I talked about in the previous slide, how when you look ahead, how difficult it is to get the actual problem that may or may not appear. But you need to take those risks and chances. Can you just play this video, a short clip? The guy on the screen has a problem which he didn't have just few moments ago. And the guy who walked away, one of our technology friends, is so happy that he solved a problem which didn't exist. The reason I share this often is it is a fantastic message for me, and I learned it the hard way myself, because this contextual awareness is not going to be in any school, in any e-module or any e-learning at all. It's something that you have to develop. This is where businesses bring their value addition of the 100 years of their existence or 50 years of existence and so on. The collective wisdom comes in. And I learned it the hard way because technology by itself need not be innovation. A blockchain, an AI, an ML may not be by itself an innovation, but the benefits that it brings to us, I think that's where the catch is. And I learned it from my previous job, and this is my last slide, from my mother. Way back when Gopi was talking about IoT, I was tempted to discuss this. Way back almost 10, 12 years ago when IoT was still at its peak, in the initial phases, I was asked to bring up a kitchen equipment with IoT. I was not convinced, but as a head of innovation, I was supposed to do that. So I came up with this induction cooktop, which you can control with a mobile phone. So I made a prototype, took it to my mother. I still vividly remember this story, the biggest lesson of my life. She was standing to my right side, I was standing there on her left, and then I connected the plug, I took out my phone, I did this, I did that, opened some app, the thing happened. She was patiently waiting because I'm her son and everything. Finally pressed something on the phone and the damn induction cooktop switched on. The technologist in me was delighted. I said, look, it switched on. She said, so? I said, what do you mean so? I can press a button here and it can switch on. But you're standing in front of it, you can switch on there itself. I said, yeah, of course. I'm VP of product innovation and blah, blah. I cannot, my ego was hurt. I said, I was traveling to China the next day. I told her, you know what? I can switch on from China. She said, why? Why would you do that? Said, oh, so I have to make an ISD call. Dear son, rice is kept. Can you please switch on? Then again, after 3 visits, I said, it's done. Can you please switch off? Said, take the crap out and get out of the house. So the reason is, we get excited about technology and we are going to be excited about it. Somewhere along the line, we should not let the benefits of technology go away. So I think the idea is, if you summarize everything, comparing range, infrastructure, readiness, sustainability, all this offers a lot of opportunities for us. But we should never ever let the benefits of this slip our minds. And it's very, very big trap that we can get into, that somewhere along this line, we may or may not be hitting the mark, the bullseye, right? So in the ICE, we have opportunity for decarbonizing. In BEV, of course, there is a rule in Europe coming up that for every 4 hours of driving, you get 45 minutes of break. What can we do in this 45 minutes when it comes to electric vehicle? You don't think you in 45 minutes you have to charge from 0 to 100. Maybe 0 to say 30 to 70 or 60 to 90. So there is a golden opportunity which we need to use cleverly. These are the contexts that I was talking about which we need to use very smartly. Of course, in fuel cell, how do you produce? Maybe we don't think like wires which goes all across the country as hydrogen pipe. Maybe we have to think differently as such. So I think we need to do this together. We don't have a choice. We have to do this together. It's not a Volvo problem. It's not a Bosch Continental problem. It's a problem for all of us in the industry. And let us not forget people and skills, because that is not automatic. And of course, Kamal mentioned yesterday also, it's not competition anymore, it's collaboration, both in technology and in business model. So join us in this journey. We at Campex in Volvo Group also look for partners and startups to join us. And thank you for listening to me. Thank you so much.